15 with the sit-in movement, and then the next year I was involved in the freedom riots, and I spent out there's been a kind of a West Coast, East Coast notion of Black arts movement, and there was not similar focus on the kinds of cultural centers in Atlanta, Chicago, where he talked very brilliantly last night about Philadelphia, Newark, Boston, Charlotte, the whole North Carolina movement. All these places have these nodes or cores of Black arts activities that were not necessarily connected with each other, or they were connected by individuals, but not in an organized way. And that's, from my perspective, that's why I tell a very quick Irvin Orr piece, how Sonia Sanchez and Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka came to San Francisco. They were icons to a whole set of people, but they were not known broadly on the West Coast. It wasn't, as Sonia Sanchez says in the movies Agents of Change, you can mention Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. But when you start talking about Langston Hughes and W.B. Du Bois, there were whole sectors of people outside of that little core of people in the eastern part of the U.S. or in the Deep South, where we knew about some, because we had Black teachers who taught us, which is why I'm from Texas and Louisiana. But the broad sector of a lot of the students, first and second generation students going into colleges and universities on the West Coast, were not as exposed in many instances as other people were. So in 66, now I'll do it very quickly, but there's so much mythology about it, I'll just try to put it in place. In 66, a group of people came together, Mariam Al-Wadi and Jerry and several others, and we decided to commit ourselves to build this Black Student Union movement on campus and lay it out in such a way that there would be no exclusivity. Everybody on the campus who defined themselves as being Black was a member of the Black Student Union. Didn't have to pay dues, didn't have to show up. Wherever you were, that's who you were. And so that identity pressed a lot of people into action and motion. The second thing was that San Francisco State was like low-hanging fruit. It was a campus of liberals. It had a liberal history. White students on the campus had been involved in the anti-HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee struggles that had taken place in downtown San Francisco in 1960. There was a history, there was a tradition of leftist activity. It was a working class campus, almost everybody worked, so that was the setting. In 1966, James Meredith went on his attempted march through Jackson, Mississippi. And through Mississippi, and he got shot. And it was out of that the call by Brother Willie Ricks for Black Power, echoed by Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, that really kind of sparked things. Although many of us who had been in the movement for years were already past Black Power in our consciousness. Actually we were pushing for Black revolution. And by that we don't mean participation, as Jim Foreman says, if you don't let us sit at the table, we're gonna cut the MF legs out from under it. That wasn't simply, we had already gone through that. We were already at a point where whether we were organized into cells or building broad-based organization, preparing ourselves for protracted struggle to overthrow the government of the United States of America. All right? Now, with regard to how we got to linking ourselves up, a group of people from San Francisco State went down to the Atlanta Project. See how the connections are made? Went down to the Atlanta Project, hooked up with people in the Atlanta Project. We were also connecting ourselves with revolutionary organizations outside the US. Several of us were invited to go to Mexico City. And the brother who went, one of the brothers who went south with us, a brother by the name of Charles Sizemore. Charles Sizemore was a graduate student at San Francisco State on the GI Bill. A very quiet brother, a very strong brother, who was a foundation for a number of us who were much younger. The two of us ended up in the fall of 1966 going to Mexico City. We connected with revolutionary individuals or people involved in revolutionary movements in Mexico and Guatemala, including Jan Sosa's organization in Guatemala. And while we were trying to take a break from a week of work, we were on a bus on our way to a bullfight, and we saw what we knew was a sister in a park in Mexico City. We got off the bus, ran over to the sister, and it turned out to be Sonia Sanchez. The most beautiful sister that either of us had ever seen on the planet, and Chuck Sizemore was smitten. Within about 3 weeks, we went to New York, where we were, let me get the sister's name. Her name was Cicely Tyson, who was a friend of Sonia's, and she was at that time with Miles Davis. We met at Cicely Tyson's apartment, and Sonia connected us with Leroy and Amina and Larry Neal. And that's where we found out that Larry Neal and Leroy were putting together a book along with a number of other people called Black Fire. What me and Chuck did, Chuck for two sets of reasons, and me for one reason. Chuck because he was in love with Sonia, and they produced twin sons, Moroni and Mungu, out of that period. And we invited Leroy and Sonia to come to San Francisco State, the purpose of which was to connect a very dynamic Black arts movement that was happening in New York, Philadelphia, Newark area to the West Coast. And we didn't have a dime to bring them out, but our arrogance, as was stated last night by Haki, that we were so young, our thing was that if we wanted to do it, we were going to do it. And that's how that happened. It was nothing magical. Well, maybe it was magical in some ways, but it was nothing. There was no genius involved. We wanted to try to pull people who had substance and capacity into what we thought was a dynamic process that was going on, and we felt at least that fusion would make things happen in a way that they had not happened in the past. And when Sonia and Leroy and Amina came out, bringing a whole wave of people, and I include brothers sitting next to me, a whole wave of energy. Sun Ra came out to play. Sun Ra on the East Coast that people knew about. Sun Ra on the West Coast blew up San Francisco. So what I'm saying is that all these musicians begin to follow that energy that these brothers and sisters had brought out from the East. And then we fed that energy that was already in existence. Last point I'll make is this, and I get in trouble for this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. There were two Black Panther parties in the Bay Area at that time. I'm sorry, my brother. There were two. There was the Black Panther Party in San Francisco and another in Oakland. And those two, the Black Panther Party in San Francisco, they had the two journals, the Soul Book and the Journal of Black Poetry, Joe Gonsalves. That was a cultural center that was extraordinary. At San Francisco State produced two centers of activities, a gallery lounge on the campus. That means that was a place where every Thursday, and sometimes every Tuesday and Thursday, musicians, artists, all kinds of people came to this. We just took it over. We took over the gallery because we took over the campus. We took over the administration. We took over the student government. We took over everything that we could that was hanging loose on the campus. That energy and power was partly driven by the kind of capacity of people like Leroy Jones and Sonia Sanchez and my brother here, who came out and helped us shape and guide and direct our cultural energies. I wanted to put that out. I know it took us a little time, but I wanted to get that out because it's urban lore that I was a part of, and I may not be here for the next next conference, but I wanted to make sure that the record is straight, that linkage was wonderful and fantastic and visceral, and it's part of the reason why Black Arts, I believe, Black Arts movement continues and lives. As long as we connect with each other and find ways to connect with each other, we will continue to survive.
Just know that these are friends.
I first of all wanted to acknowledge the presence and the importance of Dodie Simmons, who, unbeknownst to her personally, I don't think, was one of the people who inspired me. The first time I got arrested, as we say in the movie, 11th grade, sitting in at Woolworths on Canal and Rampart. And Dodie, well, Aretha was leading the whole stuff back then, and Dodie was one of the, I would say that she was at least the rank of a captain, if not a colonel, in that effort. And Dodie also, I found out in later years, has the constitution of the pack rat. So she has all kinds of papers and memento and paraphernalia. I believe she even has a sheet of paper that Jerome Smith wrote a number on and told her if something happened to call this number, and that was supposed to be Robert Kennedy, I believe it was.
Yeah, well, he didn't write it down. He gave me the number.
Okay.
After he had, well, we had been beaten in Macomb, Mississippi. And after the doctor had treated him, he turned to me and said, "Get Bobby Kennedy on the phone." And I'm looking at him like, "Man, you had one too many hits." And then he called out the number, and I wrote it down, and I still have that till this day.
And but then tell him you called him. Go ahead, tell him you called him now. Go ahead.
Well, I didn't know it was a direct line to Bobby Kennedy. I thought if I called the number, a receptionist would answer the phone. I was 18 and a half. So I called the number, and this man answered the phone. I say, "Hello, may I speak to Attorney General Bobby Kennedy?" The voice say, "This is he." I say, "My name is Dorotha Smith, and I'm calling for Jerome Smith." He said to me, "I'm aware of the situation. There are FBI agents out front waiting to take you back to New Orleans." I was 18 and a half, right? I say, "Oh, no, they won't. We're going back the way we came, by bus." And I handed the phone to Jerome.
They've put us through during slavery hasn't stopped. It's still happening right now. Part of it is the disappearance. Part of it, you see it every day on the streets. When you see somebody that's completely demoralized, whether they're talking to themselves or pushing a shopping cart, that person one time was a beautiful baby. We forget that. That person was somebody that we, coochie-cooed and talk about how cute they were and sweet they were, and something happened to turn them into this person. Obligado in Argentina, what happened with that is they just completely disappeared, all those people. And so the average black person doesn't even know that was the blues of Argentina. After that, I'm going to do a thing that's about these street kids that some of us even have the audacity to make fun of. There is no logical reason or sane reason why anybody, male, female, or any age, stands on the street 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning every day of the year, rain, sleet, or snow, unless something is seriously wrong. I won them over by writing them a love poem, and I'll get to that in a minute. Right now, Obrigado, Argentina. And if you listen with your hearts, rather than the intellect that talks about these sacred languages, you'll be able to understand it. So it's really important. We're probably the only civilization on earth where we are committed to one language. When I was in Africa, I was married at one point in my life to an African guy. The average kid was speaking 3 and 4 or 5 languages. Something weird has happened. So anyway, I guess, well, never mind, I'll just do the thing. And then hopefully you'll be able to see, when I was writing this in a series of poems on the black presence in Latin America and the Caribbean, when I got to Argentina, because the story is so horrifying sometimes, I saw these 2 beautiful blue-black dances. Of course, I put me in the picture. My friend Julian said I had an epiphany. This is what happened. Yo recuerdo la danza mística y la música sensual y el sabor a cuerpos sudorosos, el ambiente de nuestro orgullo arrogante, creatividad completa desenfrenada. Fuimos guapachosos bailadores negros celebrándonos en templos de Ciudad-Yo, recordando los días extáticos bailando contigo, libre y auténtica, una clave de nadie, tú y yo. Tú y yo, una pareja conectada eternamente y bailando obligado. Un exorcismo a pesar de una sombra de la esclavitud, colmada de una libertad inconquistada, bailando adueñarse de fiebre apasionada frenéticamente, pero suave y sin vergüenza. Remembering those faraway days like a flood of memories, like a waterfall of truth and memories, tearing up the silence of historical lies, unforgettable days that haunt me. Echoes of painful sadness as I remember those bloody days and our Africanizing nights in sacred sanctuaries, undercover happiness, forbidden joy, dancing navel to navel, dancing in safe havens covered with tears. I remember. I remember the dusty, muddy dirt of our dance floors and the price we paid to the right to dance. I remember the magic of those nights full of stars, nights completely drunk on dance, sacred memories of an unforgettable legacy, you and I. I say you and I, 2 rhythmic volcanoes, 2 dark rebels, 2 black spirits older than time, dancing navel to navel. Our holy ritual against the divine law of the lawless. And I remember you and those days dancing like we were out of our minds in the alleys, proud disciples of the church of dancing navel to navel, right in the face of the evil ghost of slavery, dancing with you and your bigger-than-life spirit, you and I. You and I, we were one body, one heart, one inseparable soul, you and I. Bathing in the moonlight, one unconquered couple, together forever and ever dancing navel to navel in Argentina. Y te recuerdo, tú y estos días, bailando como locos en los callejones, discípulos atrevidos de la iglesia de bailando obligado. A pesar de una fantasma endiablada de la esclavitud, bailando contigo y tu espíritu inmortal, tú y yo fuimos uno, un cuerpo, un corazón, un alma inseparable, tú y yo, purificándonos en la luna, una pareja inconquistable, juntos en espíritu para siempre, más jamás, bailando y bailando y bailando y bailando, obligado